Okay, the recording is now in progress. Okay, so welcome once again to the ladies' Parsha Shiur, Parsha's Miketz. Miketz, we're coming to a great climax of drama here. Last week was already pretty dramatic when we had Yosef was kidnapped, unfortunately sold. Well, not kidnapped, but sold to Egypt and Potiphar, and we had the birth of we had the marriage of Yehuda and Tamar, and then we had the dreams of the chief butler and the chief baker, and at the end of the parsha, Yosef was still languishing in jail. And here the parsha says at the end of 2 more years, which itself is interesting, because how long was he in jail? Anybody know how long he was actually in jail for?
Years.
Well, some years. Yes, good. No. 10
years?
Well, altogether, he was in jail for 12 years. How do we know? How do we know? At least 12 years, because it says when he was removed from the prison in this week's Parsha and he's brought to interpret to Pharaoh's dreams, said he was 30 years old.
Oh, wow. Right?
So he had been sold when he was 17. He spent some time in Potiphar's home, right? He spent, they say, about 6 months or so, right? In Potiphar's home. Then he was in prison. So, brought him to around 18. So another 12 years later, he was 30 before he stood before Pharaoh.
Did it go by quickly?
Did it go by? Well, in the Chumash it does. In the Chumash it does. It doesn't say so, right? Because
quickly.
Like when Yaakov was waiting to marry Rachel, it says 7 years was just like a few days, right? Because we had a whole discussion about this, you remember, a few weeks ago.
It's actually meant then.
Why?
You think it meant the same as it did now?
Why not?
Because the amount of time people lived.
But then if it was according to the time they lived, then are you saying that it really wasn't what it says they were, and it was different?
That people who got married at 3, they weren't really 3.
Well, first of all,
they are now.
No, they were different.
But talk about maturity.
Different to yours.
It's not about age. It's not about how long a year was or a day was. I think right at the beginning of the Bereshis, it speaks about days. Yom Echad. Yes. So if it doesn't, there's one very good proof where it must be referring to days that we know. What's the proof? No. We say it every week. Kiddush. Kiddush. Ki sheishes yomim asar Hashem es hashamayim v'sa'aretz u'vayom hashvi shavot vayinofash. Okay. Therefore, right? It's Yom Shabbos Kadashei. We sanctify Shabbos because he rested on the 7th day. That's why we keep Shabbos for 1 day. Now, if it wasn't 1 day, we'd have to keep it for 1,000 years, million years. I mean, what is a day? A day, we have no tradition anywhere. There's no commentary or tradition that a day does not mean a day, and a week does not mean a week, and a month does not mean a month, a year does not mean a year.
They had a different attitude.
Well, it's not just a different attitude, but their physiology was different. So that's why people lived longer before the flood. They lived hundreds of years. Even after the flood, things changed. And they started 500, 400, 300. Right? But Avram was already, he's 175. Oh, that's old. That's old. But it wasn't old compared to pre-flood, right? So, and then it even got lower. So we have to say that a day is a day. And when would it change? You see, there's nowhere it says, and now we go to today's day. You know what I mean? Or now we go to the week. There's no tradition for that.
A different counting of the years before.
Oh, that's true. No. When the year starts.
No, but I mean the length of the years, because somewhere it says that those dinosaurs that they say are millions of years old, they would whatever. They're different. We got different slang from that. But those years then
We're different.
Well, I don't know. I think
But that's what I just said, at creation. Did you hear what I just said?
creation,
Before creation.
Well, how did the
What do you mean before? The dinosaurs were created. The dinosaurs were created, just like man was created. What is it? The whole world was created. 6 days of creation. Good thing you came today. We've set you straight a bit. Yeah, well, everything was created on the 6 days of creation, including the dinosaurs. The reason the dinosaurs died out. The dinosaurs, maybe that's what I call it, dinosaurs, because they all died out, right? Because they all messed around within species, yes, and any species that intermingled was not allowed on the ark, right?
So
apart from the fact that had the dinosaurs been able to get the ark, it would have had to build an ark about 10 times the size to accommodate all the dinosaurs. So I guess it was a good thing that they all intermingled, and that's why they died out. How do we know? Because they didn't get on the ark. Only the animals that didn't intermingle. That we have a tradition. Oh, you didn't know that? Oh, there were lots of animals that were extinct, and we just said, where are all these extinct animals and why?
They donated dinosaurs and everything.
I don't know about dinosaurs in Canada. Maybe. Maybe. Jurassic. I mean, Steven Spielberg would say yes. Jurassic, Gun Eden, and all that. But they didn't just die just like that. They were around for a while.
Just discussions there, so the children have some stupid things and have on their backpacks and it's all.
Well, to put skeletons there.
Them already. He created man that was ready.
Yeah.
So he could have created.
Yeah, something he could have done.
There's plenty.
I mean, when Adam, this is the whole thing. When Adam woke up, yes, after being created by God, God breathed into him the breath of life. So right, he wakes up. Now they say he was created as a sort of a 20-year-old person. So he could have assumed that the world was at least 20, right? 20 years, even though he woke up that day. Then he sees a tree. If you cut down a tree, it'd have hundreds of rings.
Yeah.
Oh, so the world must be a couple hundred years old. Yes. Then you got coal. Well, how long is a coal? If you dig coal, yes. Then you dig and get diamonds. Diamonds. No, I'm saying he would have. He would have. Trees, yes. Do you agree with trees?
There were trees.
There were trees. So okay. So where did coal come from? Old trees.
Old trees.
Exactly.
Those were new ones.
I understand, but how new were they? How new were they?
Brand new. Brand new.
So how many rings did they have?
Maybe the rings came later. It's a coal.
A tree is made of rings. A tree is made of rings.
Okay.
Do you understand?
Yeah.
So if you cut down a tree with 100 rings, that means the tree is how old?
100.
100.
Now it means that.
And on the day, no. And on the day he was created,
mean it. Didn't they mean it?
No, that's what she's saying. It looks like it's 100 years old. So God creates a world that looks old. Yes. It's a famous thing. We are off the track a little bit, but it's an important discussion, I guess. If you're walking past a shop full of clocks, a clockmaker, yes, and it's 9:10, and all the clocks in the shop read 9:10. Yes. Well, what did the clocks read an hour ago?
8.
8:10. 8:10. Do you agree? You agree?
It's 9:10 would have been 8:10.
8:10. Do you agree?
Yeah, but I know this is something.
You know the answer?
I don't want to agree.
Logically, you would agree, yes? I would agree. No, because the guy came in.
Stop. Stop to say.
No, because the guy who runs the shop only came in at 5:02. And he started the clocks. Do you understand? But you see, you stand 10 minutes, 15 minutes later, you're looking at a clock, it says, oh. So you assume in the past. Yes, so 8:10, an hour ago. No. They didn't read any, they were all different times. An hour ago, they weren't even moving. They weren't even starting. So that's the way we look. We look at the world as always going back, right? So that's why the world looks old. It can look old. Anyway, But so okay, so have we sorted out the dinosaurs now? Have we, are we done with the dinosaurs? Yeah. They may have been. Why? They're very cute. You go coochie coochie coo to the brontosaurus. You tickle its chin.
I don't like
No, I beg your pardon. That's not what.
Pigs, because you're not, he doesn't understand the backpacks and all the. Never mind.
Yeah, sorry about
Let's stick with the.
Please forgive my ignorance on that. But yes. Okay. Now let's go getting back to the Parsha. You know, it's interesting, as we just mentioned, that 2 years, like this 2 years, it seems, was an extra punishment, if I can use that word, or an extra consequence. That sounds much more politically correct, isn't it? Consequences, as opposed to punishments. Yes. Is it the kibbud avim thing? Well, it does relate to it, but of course that's it depends on whose perspective. Remember, from Yaakov's perspective, you might want to say yes. Remember, this is part of this is only 10 years into the absence. But why did Joseph have to stay in prison for another 2 years? Because what happened, if you look at the end of last week's Parsha, he spoke to the Saramashka, yes, and on page 264, yes, the wine shop, and he whatchamacallit, he sold his dream very effectively, very correctly, and he was released. And of course, he said to him, "Look, please remember me when you get out, and please get me out of here. I need you to report that I'm, this, that, and the other. I report dreams. I do dreams. That's what I do. Maybe Pharaoh needs me. And so please mention me, and I can, get out of this place, because it's unfair. I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't do anything wrong. The one person who was thrown into jail for supposedly committing adultery was the one person in Egypt who didn't commit adultery with Mrs. Potiphar, was thrown in jail. It's like unbelievable. This is the libel. I always find it libel. The Jews, every generation, they lie about us. It's libels. They're still doing it right down till today. The only people who care about civilians in the Middle East are the Jews trying to stop it. And the whole world screams at us. Yes, they're libeling us. It's like Joseph, everybody was committing adultery then, right? How do we know they were committing adultery? This is a parenthetical statement, because at the plague of the firstborn, how many people died in each home? There were a whole bunch of people dying in each home, 4 or 5 people dying in each home. So Rashi says, well, why were they all? There's only one firstborn in a home. So they said, well, because the woman they were committing adultery like all the time with people, and therefore each of their firstborns, right, to that particular chap, whoever it was. Yes, that's why there were 4 or 5 people, right, dying. A crazy situation there. So Joseph was the one person, right, who didn't do it, right, and he gets thrown in jail for a crime he never committed. And everybody was talking about it, and it was like in all the papers. It's literally just like it is now, right? We're the one nation in the world that cares more about civilians than anybody else in history, right? You don't have any horrible videos of Israelis doing terrible things to Palestinians, right? Like they did to the Jews. None, not one video. The most is they walk into an apartment and say, where's the terrorist? That's the terrible thing, So not much has changed, fortunately. What were we going to say? I forgot. Okay, fine. So why did he have to spend another 2 years when really, because it says this butler forgot all about him.
Why did he forget for 2 years?
Well, it's interesting. Rashi says, why did he? First of all, he sometimes you forget something, then you remember, you forget, you remember. Sometimes, like I must do something, right? I know I need to do it, and you mentally say, oh, right, and then you forget, and then you remember, yeah, I got to do it. But eventually, you're like, oh, I can't be bothered altogether.
The opportunity only arose when the Pharaoh had the dreams. That's what jogged his memory.
Well, obviously, but Hashem could have made him have the dreams 2 years earlier. Why did he have his dreams too early? That's the question. Why do you have to spend 2 years in prison? Now, the interesting question, because the question is a bit more, even more complicated, because normally you have the idea, it says, because he trusted in this butler to get him out of prison. And that he shouldn't have done. He should have said, Hashem, you help me out, whatever, you'll help me out, right? But then you have a question, but aren't you supposed to do things in the realm of nature? You're not supposed to just rely on miracles.
Make yourself a keli.
Make a keli, make a vessel, exactly. Do something.
That was a normal request, though.
It was a normal, exactly. It was a normal, natural request. That's I'm making the question stronger. You're making the question stronger. It was a normal, natural request in the natural scale and order of things to try and get him out of prison. If you see a natural way of doing something, yes, you're supposed to do it. You're supposed to use that. You can't just rely on miracles, right? Like the guy drowning in the sea. Hashem sends in, a helicopter to help him. No, I don't need any help. Hashem's going to help me. Don't worry about it, Then he says, my lifeboat. No, Hashem's going to help me. I don't take the lifeboat. Hashem will save me, right? Comes up to heaven. Why don't you? Oh, I believed in you. I trusted you. Sorry, that doesn't work. Yes?
Well, he must have been asking Hashem too. I mean, even like, when he was in the fish, he was davening, wasn't he?
Of course he was davening. So you're making the question stronger.
Only relying on the butler, was he?
Relying on the
Butler.
well, that it seems, at least from what the Rebbe says, that was part of the problem. The problem was, and this is a very, how shall I say, it's a very delicate and refined thing here, and you're talking about tzaddikim. Yeah, because on normal human level, it's very hard to kind of understand, because you see, it seems, at least this is what the Rebbe said, a tzaddik could probably say this, because I'd never be able to say it, and it wouldn't even occur to me to say this, that Yosef, it seems, was so sure that the salvation was going to come through this guy, that it was a bit of like, in a sense, reading God's script for him. You read the script, and he was imputing to Hashem that, this has to be the way I'm going to be saved. Now, the fact is, it was. Ultimately, it was. It was the way. However, we that's not what we're not really, I guess, supposed to do that. We're supposed to just say, look, Hashem can save me in any way he decides. He could save us in a miraculous way, in a not so miraculous way. And our job perhaps is not to, force a particular form of redemption that we think is going to be good. It's okay to believe that perhaps, but not to believe that that's the only thing that can happen, right? Because Hashem can do, there's many, many ways that Hashem can save a person. So it seems that because Yosef invested very heavily in this, on this way of salvation, very specific form of salvation, that was considered on his level, not such a great idea, not such a good idea. So I was punished for those 2 extra years. He should have he should have said, like, look, if Hashem decides to save me with this, no, he says me that. But he could save me any other way, right? That's like what perhaps he should have done. Here he said, like, he's definitely, this is it, Sorry?
No, he was released ultimately because
yes, he was.
Interpretation.
Yes, and it was through the butler.
Exactly.
That's the funny thing.
Was putting these dreams into this.
Yes.
Butler and the.
I mean, the funny thing is that is precisely how he was.
So
Yosef was right.
Yeah.
He was right.
That was.
But I guess
beyond nature.
Yes, but I guess the fact is that Hashem
concealed.
It's very hard. It's a very delicate point, and it's only for tzaddikim really, because tzaddikim, I guess, are supposed to have much more humility, in the sense of believing that that Hashem can do anything, anyway, anyhow, any shape, any form, right? And that's, anyway. Just wanted to share that little point. Okay, now let's go a little bit to the dreams. The dreams of Paro, interesting dreams. We know there are. Let's say compare them to the dreams of Yosef. Now, Yosef's dreams, if you remember from last week's Parsha, were on page 268 269. Yosef's dreams from last week started off with what? Started off with the whatchamacallit, the sheaves of corn. Sheaves of corn, right? And then they went on the sun, moon, and the stars. Pharaoh started off with the cows, and then went down to the sheaves of corn. So you notice that interesting. So Pharaoh starts off with the vegetation. Sorry, starts off with chai, animal form. That's his first dream. And then it kind of goes down to a lower level of life form. Yes? Which is vegetation. So he's going downhill. The idea of poches v'holech, sort of, yes? Yeah. With regard to the non-Jewish world, it's going downhill, as it were. Yosef starts off with animal, vegetation. Yes, ma'alamim, alamim, sheaves of corn. Yes, we're doing stuff. And then it goes up. Sun, moon, stars. That's a much more spiritual thing, right? So here we're going, that's the idea of always going up in terms of Kedusha. Yosef represents the Kedusha, holiness. So he's going up. Our idea is Holech v'Mosef, like Hanukkah, the lights go up more and more and more, not less and less and less. Although Hillel holds to go less and less, but the halacha is we go more and more, right? So that's the idea of Yosef's dreams versus Paro's dream. Also, Paro was passive, his dreams. He was watching. He's watching what's going on. He's just watching. And what's going on in Yosef's dream? They're all working. They're all gathering together, the stalks, working. Yes? So there's an idea that Judaism believes that, as far as we're concerned, we don't just get stuff for free. There's have the sort of idea of not just a passiveness. Our idea is to work, yes, and to get what we need through working. Okay, so that's just a little bit of the in terms of those dreams. Yeah. Now let's go to Yosef's interpretation, shall we? I've got a few questions for you. I've actually written them down. Just so I don't forget.
It's a test.
It's all a test. So here's the question. 4 questions. First of all, I mean, Pharaoh, when he hears these dreams, he's so impressed. Wow. The interpretation. When Pharaoh hears the interpretation, Yosef's interpretation, he is blown away. What? Has anybody seen anything like this? This guy's awesome, right? But now, that's one question. I mean, that follows on really from another question is, look, 7 fat cows, 7 skinny cows, 7 fat corns, ears of corn, 7 skinny. I mean, sounds a bit kind of like plenty and famine. Like, is that such like genius? Would that maybe occur to you or you? Is it? Not you. Okay, you not. But certainly, afraid of suffering, certainly would have occurred to her that the 7 fat cows represent 7 plenty years, right? I mean, think about it. They did such a good course that even when they ate the fat cows, they were still slim. Yeah, that's a very good course. So I mean, is it really? Are we all? Round of applause for Yosef for really sort of interpreting something that was really kind of pretty basic, really pretty kind of, one might even want to say obvious. And if so, how come the Egyptian dream interpreters, who were the top, they were really, they were professional. Why didn't they occur? Why did it occur to them? I mean, if they're so into dreams, yes, but no. They have another interpretation. What's their other interpretation? Anybody remember what Rashi says?
He's going to have his daughters.
Yes, he's gonna have 7 daughters. He's going to have 7 new daughters born to him, and then he's going to bury 7 daughters, but not necessarily the same daughters. No, we're going to get to that. It doesn't say, he doesn't say he will bury those daughters. No, he doesn't say bury those daughters. You will have 7 daughters, you will bear, or how, what do you say for a man? You'll have 7 kids, right? 7 daughters. Beget, begotten indeed. You will father 7 daughters. Yes, good word. Yeah. And then you will bury 7 daughters. Just to give you a little bit of a PS to this question. In the Midrash, where this whole thing Rashi lifts the story from, the dream interpreters, they had another one. They had another interpretation, which Rashi doesn't even bring. It's another thing that Pharaoh didn't like, but why doesn't he bring them? Rashi says, not Rashi, the Midrash says that the dream interpreter said, you will conquer 7 countries, you will wage war and conquer 7 countries, and 7 countries will conquer you. He doesn't bring that. What's going on? So what's going on? And one more final question. At the end of the interpretation that Yosef gives, what does this do? It doesn't say, and that is the interpretation. He says, oh, by the way, Pharaoh, I suggest that you should make somebody in charge, put somebody in charge, and he's going to run Egypt. He's going to, and he should look at and amass all the food, blah, blah. Hey, he's telling Pharaoh what to do. He's advising Pharaoh on his political administration. Isn't that a bit sort of cheeky? The guy's just been in prison for 12 years for doing apparently something, very bad. He gets out of prison in order to give an interpretation. Okay, you get out, you say your interpretation, and you shut up. Okay, you've done it. He starts saying, by the way, this is what you ought to do, mate. Get yourself a prime minister who knows exactly how to do this, do that, do the other. Excuse me. Right? That takes some, chutzpah, as they might say. So these are some of the questions. Is that all clear? So let's get. Hello? Sorry?
No, it's not his place to give advice. Turkey.
But that
I don't know.
That's
I
why.
don't know.
Sorry?
That was all Hashem's plan to get Yaakov down for me, to get him out of there.
Yeah. Okay. We'll get you, but doesn't negate the question. It was all part of, everything is part of Hashem's plan. Everything is part of Hashem's plan. But Hashem gives free choice. Hashem does, I'm saying, we're living in a way that is, yeah. So the question is on Yosef. How could Yosef do what he did? That's the question. If it seems a bit bizarre that he starts giving advice to the king after the interpretation. Okay. So here, let's come to the answer. Yes. Yes. Okay. I just wanted to welcome Azar to the shiur. Nice to see you. So here's the. Let's try and understand this dream a second, and what the real problem with this dream was. The problem was not that there were 7 fat cows, 7 skinny cows, 7 fat ears, and fat. That wasn't really the problem with the dream, because actually that is pretty kind of basic. Yes, that is what one would understand to be an interpretation of what's going on. But the problem was that if you look at the Chumash itself, what does it say? Where are we? Parsha Miketz. In verse, let me just explain to you what the problem is. There's one word here that causes all the problems. If you look at verse 3, right? Verse 3, it says that the 7 cows, the 7 cows came up after them, right? And they were thin and ugly. Now, what happened? It says, they stood next to the fat cows on the river. Now, that is a little bit of a problem. Why is that a problem? It's a problem in terms of dream interpretation, because if 7 is 7 years, versus 7 years. In other words, 7 years followed by 7 years. Verse 3, I'm saying in page 268, page 268, verse 3. If you have 7 years come before 7 other years, right?
How do you know which will
Not
come
how do you
first?
no, because the first ones were the fat cow.
Oh.
No, that's not the problem. The problem is they stood next to the other ones. So that means that they're kind of like coexisting at the same time.
Yeah.
That is the problem. How do you have 7 years in one chronology, right? Coexisting with 7 later years.
Right.
They can't be at the same time. It's one before the other. That's the problem.
This is
Well, you don't think about these
Reading
things.
about
Again, I'm
this.
giving you this is the Rebbe. I'm telling you only what the Rebbe says, right? The Rebbe suggests this because he asks all these questions, by the way.
Mhm.
I mean, there are other Meforshim do ask this, but he just heightens it. So the problem was in the eyes of the magicians, everybody's got a problem here because you can't have 7 years of plenty at the same time as 7 years of famine. You can't have it. So that the problem was standing next to, Etzel, next to, by them, coexisting, consecutive at the same time. It does not work. So from their perspective, yes, the dream interpreters say that this cannot mean what you think it means, which is 7 years of plenty, 7 years of famine, because you can't have 2 at the same time.
Yeah, but
Just
we
1
know
second.
it did mean-
Only because
No, it did not mean that. What do you mean it
wasn't
didn't?
that reality.
No, what do you mean the reality?
What
First came in
relates
7 years.
So plenty in 7 years. of
Yeah, but when
famine.
did the 7 years of famine come?
I don't know.
What do you mean you don't know? When did the after? That's the key word. After, not the same time. That's the whole problem. It's after.
But he interpreted it.
Well, hold on. Well, we'll get to Yosef's interpretation. But we're talking about the problem with the dream now. We asked why the Egyptians did not get it.
Yeah.
And the reason they didn't get it was because of this word. Because you got the 2 at the same time. So this is the problem. So that's why, if I can just finish, then you answer the question. That's why they said, if you have to have something that's corresponding, coexisting at the same time, right? How many wives did Pharaoh have? Take a guess. Okay, that's a guess.
Serious?
Okay. Well, he certainly didn't just have one.
Uh,
Right? It wasn't a monogamous sort of chat, was it? All these, they had lots and lots of wives. They had lots of wives. So therefore, if you had lots and lots of wives, yes, it makes sense that he could have at the same time 7 births. He could have fathered 7 daughters, and at the same time, you understand, they could bury them, right? Because you got lots of wives having lots of kids. Yes, that's why the Egyptians did that. But to say about the wars, by the way, that's very unlikely. You're going to be fighting 7 wars, and at the same time you're fighting the war. First of all, you don't fight 7 wars. You normally fight 1 war or 2 wars, on a flight, the 2, 7, that's totally Meshuggah. And then to have another 7 conquering you at the same time, it doesn't quite make sense, right? So therefore, they were more favorably in tune with the idea of 7 daughters, yes, and 7 daughters, yes. You understand? So this is why they offered that interpretation. Now, Mrs. King. Your question was answered, Jimmy.
It was just that I had this thought that in Gaza and them places, you've got that half of the Hamas lot, they've got plenty to eat, and the others are starving.
All right.
And that's at the same time.
Very good. Very good. Very good. I like that. Good for it. Very good. Very good. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Now let's get back to the real, the real times, the reality of the whole shit. Yeah, this is just a nightmare. This is just a dream. Anyway,
Well, no, dream, not a nightmare.
it is a nightmare. It says when Mashiach comes, Hayuna Kacholmin. We say it in benching every time we bench. Shir Maz B'Shuv Hashem. Eshu Hashem Hayuna Kacholmin. It'll be when Mashiach comes. It'll be like we've awoken from a terrible nightmare, from a dream. So that's what Mashiach is about. May he come b'mher Rabbeinu Omen.
Okay.
Now, let's get back to our point here. So here's where Yosef comes in. Yosef's got a completely different genius. And his solution is a very novel one, which is why he was actually advising Pharaoh the way he did. It wasn't actually advising Pharaoh. It was part of the interpretation. He understood this whole dream that Hashem is giving Pharaoh a kind of a warning about, what's going to happen, right? It's going to be some good times and bad times, but he's also giving him, so to speak, the solution to the problem. What's the solution? And the solution is the idea of them standing together, coexisting. Because if you appoint somebody to utilize the 7 years of plenty, to store, to invest, to save all that food over the next 7 years, it's as though then while you're in the 7 years of plenty, your mind is completely on the 7 years of famine coming. And that's how they're coexisting at the same time. You're not just experiencing years of famine, of plenty, and then years of, right? You're thinking, hey, I've got 7 years to save, 7 years to put this on. And this guy is going to galvanize the whole people into bearing in mind that we must save, we must put away food, we must, and that's what they all say nowadays, the boom and bust, right? And nobody saves for the bust. They're all busy spending and having a great time during the boom, which is stupid, and that's right. People don't save. It's a bit, yeah. So here's saying like this, it's been going on for thousands of years, this boom and bust, yes? So here, if you have somebody there who's going to galvanize the country, then you understand that the 7 lean years and the 7 years of plenty are actually corresponding, coexisting at the same time. And that's why he made this interpretation that the soothsayers and the dream interpreters couldn't figure that out. And that's why Pharaoh said, genius. Nobody thought of that. So far from being chutzpah, him, inviting, trouble from Pharaoh, he was actually giving Pharaoh the solution, which Hashem himself, of course, that's the whole point. He said, listen, the whole purpose of this dream is to provide you with news, and of course it's going to help Yosef as well, because I have in mind Yosef. Do you know what I'm saying? So therefore he had that dream. So this resolves all the questions that we had. Okay? Any questions on that? No? So should we talk a little bit about Hanukkah? I mean,
last day.
No, it's a day and a half.
Yeah.
We've got 2 days still left. That's right. And I mentioned actually in Shul and Shabbos that how we sort of noticed Hanukkah in the Parsha. So I'll just share it with you now. I mean, at the end of Parsha's Vayechi, the very end, when the brothers, if you want, you can point to the page if you like. I can send you the page because it's relevant to now. So it's on page 340, 341.
43, 41.
Sorry, actually, it might be before. Hold on.
318.
318.
Hold on. No.
Yeah. You're looking for 318.
No, page 340. Page 341, the end of Parsha's Vayechi.
Yeah.
Okay, at the end of the book, right? So look what it says in verse 21. What happened was, just very briefly, the brothers, we'll speak about this in a couple of weeks' time, when Yaakov died, Yosef stopped inviting the brothers to Friday night dinner, Shabbos Kiddush, right? Shabbos Tish. So, and they got a bit concerned. They thought, oh, Yosef's gone funny because Yaakov's died and he's now going to get us back. Because we saw, while Dad was alive, he wouldn't do anything, right? But now that he's gone, right? So he's going to get us back. So they came in, they threw themselves on the floor. They were terrified and scared. please, we're sorry. This is after 17 years, right, of being in Egypt. Okay, they're still paranoid about it. And Yosef says to them, if you look on verse Chafalov, it says, Vaidaber el libam. The end, he says, he spoke to their hearts. What does it mean he spoke to their hearts? So Rashi brings two interpretations. One interpretation, verse 21, he says, there's something that are miskablim alalev. How do you say miskabel alalev? They were received very well. They're like, oh, like, it made you feel better. Two things he said. Look, he says, why would I do anything bad to you? When I was here, but before you guys came, everyone said I was a slave, a Hebrew slave, and nothing a Gornish to Shmendrik, He says, when you guys came, I realized I'm part of a Choshev Mishpacha from outside, from Eretz Yisrael. I'm a free man, I'm a great man, great family, Yaakov. So you were so good for my reputation. Why would I kill you now? Are you crazy? That'd be stupid. I'd be killing my own reputation. Right? That's one thing. Then he said like this, and this is where it comes to Hanukkah. He says, 10 candles tried to extinguish one candle. 10 lights, 10 lamps tried to extinguish one. That was the brothers against me. He says, you think one candle could extinguish 10? Light is light. Light cannot extinguish light. That's an oxymoron. It may hide the light, like, like the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, is there sunlight in the sun? Is there sunlight in the sun?
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course there's sunlight. But you can't really see it because of the sun. No, because it's not out.
Oh, okay.
You can only see the sunlight
This-
when it's outside the sun. When it comes to planet Earth, we see the sunlight. It's light, isn't it? It's light all over the place, right? But we're seeing, even if you can't see the sun, like 90% of the time over here, you can't see the sun, but we see the sunlight. So inside the sun is just sun. It's plasma, whatever it is, right? So the light is overwhelmed by the plasma. It's overwhelmed by the sun, right? So light cannot extinguish other lights. In a sense, that's what Hanukkah is all about. They've tried to extinguish lights. That's what the Greeks tried to do. They tried to extinguish the light of Judaism. And unfortunately, there were so many Jews who were kind of willing allies to the Greeks. And I mentioned last week that the Al-Hanissim that we say, Tigazin. One more? Just for luck? Okay. All right. Let us know. And the Al-Hanissim that we say, there's sort of two opinions. One of it looks like this discussion about the Greeks. Rabbi Ma'atim, Tameim, Ma'atahorim. Yes, the many in the hands of the few and impure in the hands of the pure. But many of the commentaries say that actually it's referring to the Jewish Hellenists, who were very many at the time, compared to the ones who were keeping Torah mitzvahs fully. Hellenists. You don't know what
they siding with the opposition.
What do you mean the opposition? Yes, with the Greeks.
Yeah.
Exactly. Look, there were people who, Greeks were trying to overrun the Holy Land, not just physically, but spiritually. They wanted to destroy Judaism, right? They were interested in, the body, the physical stuff, philosophy. That's what they say. One of the reasons why we eat donuts on Hanukkah.
Yeah.
Why do we eat donuts on Hanukkah?
Because
because the body, because the
Greeks were all about health and
body.
and because donuts are bad for you, we should eat them on Hanukkah.
So you have one a day.
We make sure not to be like the Greeks who worship their bodies. It's a joke. Serious. So, oil. They made in oil. Latkes as well.
Yeah.
Yes. They told another story. You tell Mrs. Kima, do you know about this one? About the guy, the rabbi was giving a he was giving he had a Hanukkah party in Shul. He was into antiques, and he told everybody, he says, see this menorah? This menorah is 200 years old. And he says, this dreidel, he says, 300 years old from Spain or wherever, right? There's some oil. This oil is 1,000 years old. They found it in the caves by the Dead Sea. So he's going on and on and on about how old everything is. So somebody puts his hand up, says, yeah, which century are the latkes from? Anyway, so we have this idea that the light that they tried to extinguish is precisely why we're like the menorah now, because it was a spiritual light. It's interesting, the whole miracle of the menorah, the miracle of the menorah the oil lasting 8 days is not even mentioned in the book of Maccabees. The book of Maccabees, which is two books actually. There's two books of the Maccabees which are in the Apocrypha. The Apocrypha, which is known as the books that did not get into the Bible, the Hebrew Tanakh. There's a whole bunch of books were called Sforim Chitzonim. They're outside the Tanakh. It's not even mentioned. And that the whole idea of the menorah, because there was two victories in Hanukkah. One was the physical victory of the wars. That was a miraculous, amazing thing, right? But the spiritual thing, which was the real victory, and that was the one that actually, that was the one with even more important, because, there was a time when they even wanted to banish, they wanted to abolish Hanukkah. Did you know that? There was a time after the destruction of the temple, after the destruction, the Jews.
No.
There is a statement in the Sefer Megillas Tanis. It's a famous book, famous Sefer, famous scroll that says when all the days, when you don't fast, when you do fast, right? Hanukkah was mentioned, but then they said that there was Botla Megillas Tanis, and meaning that even that it was bottled, it's no more relevant. That those festival days, because of the disruption of the temple, because of the trauma and the lowness of the Jewish people, they say, well, what are we celebrating Hanukkah for? We don't even have a temple anymore. The fact that Hanukkah was, and we rededicated the temple and we won against the Greeks and we were able to continue the service of the Beis Hamikdash, that makes sense. But once the temple's gone, forget it. It's a waste of time, not to talk about. But you see, when you understand that the part of the miracle, or the real miracle, was about the menorah lasting for 8 days, right? Which is a miracle in and of itself. He said, you know what? I'm going to carry on keeping Hanukkah. And the rabbis, it was a bit of an argy-bargy, it seems, in the 2nd century or so. Yes?
Say,
Who said what and who said this and who said what? Who was the protagonists? I'm not sure who the protagonists were, but you could probably look it up. And I'll try and see if I can do some research for you. But the point of the matter is that we now celebrate that spiritual miracle, because that is, in a sense, what relates to every single Jew. The ability that we sometimes think that our spirituality is gone, is exhausted, is finished. We can't last anymore. We can't handle it anymore. And you understand, when we try, and anyways try like that menorah, Hashem will show us that we ourselves, we have an inexhaustible fount of spirituality and spiritual wealth that doesn't run dry, and it will last for as long as is needed. If it would have been 10 days, would have been 2 weeks, who knows what difference? It would have still lasted. But that was the miracle, and that's what we have to realize. And sometimes we have fat years, and sometimes we have good years, and sometimes we have skinny years. Sometimes things are wonderful and inspiring and lovely and wealthy and happy, and everything's hunky-dory, right? And then sometimes we have some really tough times that we fall upon, where financially, spiritually, physically, who knows what? We know, everyone knows what we're talking about. It's everywhere. Unfortunately, it happens to everyone. Yes, I think it's very rare that people go through life with just everything is just hunky-dory all the time, year after year after year after year. Right? Even Yaakov, at the end of it, took him 17 years. The last 17 years of his life, after he had peace. Yeah, true. I mean, he did have some other periods of peace, but the last 17 years was the best. That was the business class.
Yosef discontinue with his brothers. Remind me again.
Why did he discontinue? Well, we'll talk about that next time. But basically, in a nutshell, it seems that he look, he wanted to makarev his brothers
Right.
because of his father.
Right.
He didn't want his father to think, maybe,
There's a rift.
that there was a rift, there was something. So he did it for 17 years.
Yeah.
It's not like, did he have to prove anything now? And I did my duty to Queen. No, I love you guys. You've been around me. We sang Zmiris every Friday night for 17 years. All right, like enough is enough. You kind of moving on. It's not like I've changed. No, on the contrary, it's not because he had a taina. He wasn't doing it.
Not see his family after he died.
I didn't say he didn't see them, but they lived in different parts. He was living in, Westminster or City of London, and they were living in Golders Green or Hendon or Edgware. But they lived in Goshen. And so say Goshen.
There were so many grandchildren of them that he couldn't house them anymore. He could stay at home. Look, you can't have all your kids come in one Shabbos. No, there's no room.
It's good Chiddush. I think you should write this down in your book of Chiddushim, Mrs. Safran.
I will tell him. I'd go away.
We could call it Chiddushei Harafas. Chiddush Harafas. The Chiddushim of Rebbetzin, Freidas Safran. Chiddushei Rafas. What do you think?
They're sort of coming to him, and then
it's just too much. There's too much cholent to have to make, too much kegel, and the kids are making too much noise when they leave the table. It's just too much for him. He had, it was like Diana already. All right. All right. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll see you again next week. So nice to see Denise and Mrs. Joss at the vote. Right? And Peggy. Well, we got to report everybody, and Azar as well. And we'll see you in Hashem next time. And happy Hanukkah, Afreik and Hanukkah. Mashiach is coming this week. I'm gonna stop recording now.
Very nice to see you.
Yes, indeed. Even if